Welcome to AWANI Review. My name is Cynthia Ng, and in this episode today, we will be taking a deeper look into the prevalent problems of job scams and worker exploitation, particularly in Southeast Asia. And joining me on the show is Scott Stiles. He's the head of fair hiring and special advisor at Seek Asia. Scott joins us from Hawaii. Thank you so much for making time to be on this interview.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, Scott, job scams is definitely a big problem here in Southeast Asia, but I do want to start with a bit of your background. Could you tell us a bit more about your story and how you ended up at Seek Asia?
Yeah, that'd be great. So a quick background. I actually come from the social enterprise space. Grew up in the U.S. I saw some of the issues that migrant workers face while on an internship in Hong Kong. And so I ended up moving to Hong Kong and starting a group of social enterprises along with co-founders focused on preventing the exploitation of migrant workers. And so I'd been doing that. I was 8 or 9 years into that. And then I actually got reached out to by the regional CEO of Seek, which are the brands. It's JobStreet and JobsDB are the brands that people would be more familiar with. And they reached out saying, hey, we have this role basically in charge of making sure that there's not exploitation or kind of making sure that our platforms are really trusted and safe. And I looked at it and said that the scale of a business like Seek, which is these JobsDB, JobStreet brands, basically was a more impactful opportunity for me. And it allowed us to kind of at scale prevent workers from falling into bad situations in a way that was just too compelling to pass up. And so I've been with them for just under a year now.
Help us understand a bit more. How does a job platform run by Seek Asia, how does it eliminate the risk of job scams on its platform?
Oh yeah, well, so that's the nice, one of the cool things, and I just joined about a year ago, and one of the neat things has been to see for me is that that Seek and JobStreet are so focused on keeping our platform safe. We have a team of almost 50 people across the Asia Pacific and across the Asia region that are focused on making sure that the verifying all the hirers that are coming on our platforms. We're looking at job ads. So every first job ad that a hirer posts is having a person that's viewing it. We're then doing running and searches and filters on all the job ads that are going up, and we have teams that are actually responding to all those reports. And so what's been really neat for me to see has been the focus that we have at a company like JobStreet in keeping our platform safe and secure, right? Mm-hmm. And so are there going to be bad actors out there? Yes. But are we really focused on doing the right thing over and over again? Absolutely.
Right. So while JobStreet, JobsDB, these are reputable platforms, but I think what's happening now is a lot of these job scams are taking place outside of platforms such as yours, such as we see a lot of scams on WhatsApp, on Telegram. And I do wonder, I know based on your work and your observation, how extensive this problem and what tactics are scammers using to scam job seekers?
Yeah, I think so. That's you're hitting on the most common kind of problem that we're seeing, and we call it brand leeching, right? So you mentioned some of these messaging tools, but what a lot of those scammers are doing is they're mentioning brands like JobStreet, right? So a lot of the messages are saying, hey, it's me, John from JobStreet. I have a job opportunity at another reputable, trusted company. Are you interested, right? And what they're trying to do is hook people in by leeching off these brands, right? And so that's by far the most common thing. And the unfortunate thing, and well, it's fortunate but unfortunate, is that those things are all totally off platform, right? We don't actually have any visibility to that. And so what we take really seriously in this case is raising awareness, right? And that's why we're talking today, is because there's some companies that see these types of challenges happen and they kind of want to run away from them and kind of say, oh no, and we want to run to it because we want to make people aware of the things that are happening and let them know that we're not involved with them, and also make them aware of what to do when they whenever something bad happens or they receive a report of something like this.
Well, let's delve deeper into that. As a potential job seeker looking to get jobs, and you see really advertisements which could be too good to be true, but still enticing enough for you to want to share your information. I do wonder who do you think are the most vulnerable groups are being targeted by job scammers, and what are the red flags to look out for?
Yeah, no, that's a big question, right? Because there's different layers to it, right? So I think one of the things that I think that is important to cover is the change that we've seen in scamming behavior over the last several years, right? So say 10 years ago, we thought of a scammer as somebody who would send an email saying, hey, you can get rich quick if you transfer me this money, or it was a text message or a phone call saying, I'm stuck in a prison, please let me out, or something like that, right? And so a lot of the scamming that went on was about impulse, right? It was getting to somebody to act quickly, have a quick hit type of activity. Now, what's happened is with the proliferation of technology allowing for more anonymous transactions, anonymous communications, the scammers are now focusing on building trust with their victims first. And so it's a big shift in how they communicate, right? Because it went from, if I'm going to have to call you through a regular phone, that could probably be tracked. So I want to limit those communications. Whereas WhatsApp and other kind of messaging tools can be tracked. They can have, months and months of interactions. And so what these scammers are doing is they're actually investing in the long term of the relationship and trying to kind of take advantage of their victims. And so what we're seeing, what's the most common are kind of a blend of the two. A lot of them are actually investment scams that they're reaching out and they're saying, hey, you can invest in this platform or that, especially with crypto. But the second most common would be onboarding scams, right? And that's where they're trying to hook somebody in, make them interested in a job. And you start to think about the psychology. And this is why this is so kind of, why we take it so seriously, is because the psychology of somebody that's leaving a job, right? Say a new opportunity comes to you, you're excited about it, you tell your friends and family, you go through all these steps, right? You talk to the interviewer, you check them out online, they offer you more money than you're making, you're all excited, you may even resign from your current post, you've told your family that you've got this great new high-paying job. And so when that person who's a scammer then says, oh, all you need to do is pay us, 2,000 ringgit for your computer equipment to get started. Oh, there's another 2,000 ringgit in onboarding and training. When they do that, the person is so heavily invested that it's really hard for them to then pull out of the situation. And so the psychology behind these scammers is really harmful and scary. And that's why for us, our focus is how can we create this awareness so that when people start to see the signs, they can start to pull back and say, wait, this isn't something that I want to go forward with. And then on the flip side, make sure that on our platforms are as clean as we possibly can make them. And when there's issues or questions, people can report it so that we can investigate further.
Well, as someone that has worked with a lot of migrants and covered a lot of exploitation issues pertaining to workers, I do wonder what steps can be taken if someone unfortunately fall victim to such scams. In Malaysia, we've heard so many cases of scam victims stranded overseas, or even some losing their lives because of job scams.
Yeah, I mean, the first step is to try to stop it as soon as possible, right? And so, those types of situations. The first thing that I would like us to kind of focus on is thinking about if it's too good to be true. Many of these roles, right? So many times the really exploitative ones in cases of pig butchering and other things, they've been jobs that are really high paying, especially for the country that they're going to, right? And so I think that kind of looking at if it makes sense. So the first thing would be kind of that gut check of, is it too good to be true, would be the first thing that I would ask myself. The second one would be, are they reaching out through social media, or are they following a channel that makes sense for a normal hiring process, right? And that's a thing that I think we can kind of look at. Are you looking for a job? Did they contact you by name, or did they send a blast out on one of these messaging platforms, right? And then, are there vague or changing job requirements, right? What we've heard from folks and what we've read in reports is that a lot of times the job requirements are shifting or changing as people are going through the recruitment and onboarding process. And so do those make sense? And so a lot of these kind of signals or triggers are what you want to look for. And for me, the biggest kind of risk environment is in that migration environment, right? And so once somebody starts to migrate, once they start to take those steps, you have visas, you have potentially visa violations. And so it's making sure that if you do go abroad for a job, you have the proper visa in place, you've reached out to your consulate and made sure that the company is real and that everything is legit. And that also you've built kind of a network in place when you get there so that there's some people that you can contact if things go awry. And those are kind of the biggest steps for us.
I think when you talk about job scams, yes, it's prevalent across the spectrum, be it more professional jobs, IT job, and even, of course, migrant workers, which is a big problem here in Southeast Asia. With your experience, working with migrants, especially in the domestic household, domestic workers segment, I do wonder, do you see how forced labor and job scams, the gender disparities in exploitation is what I want to get at. Do you see, is there a particular group that is targeted by scammers?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing about scammers is they're pretty indiscriminate about who they're scamming, right? It's whoever they can make money off of. And so what I would say is, are they targeting one group? They're going to target the most vulnerable group, whoever they may be, right? And so when it comes to domestic workers versus migrant workers that are working in a factory or agriculture, I almost classify those as separate issues, because a lot of those are issued to kind of indebtedness and kind of falling into kind of debt bondage situations. Whereas the job scams and the trafficking that we're seeing out of that tends to be, like you're saying, more white collar. And they're looking for folks that can, because what they're doing is you have these groups that are running oftentimes these scamming call centers. If we're talking about kind of the issues that in Cambodia and some of the other spots you're talking about, and those call centers, they need educated people that have good language skills, that can write clearly, that can build relationships. And so it's a big shift in the target group. They're targeting vulnerable people still. And this is where we think that raising awareness as there's economic changes is really important as well. Because as people go through those changes, they become more vulnerable. And we want to make sure we're addressing it head on.
I do want to switch gears a little, talk a bit more about yourself. You are the head of fair hiring at Seek Asia, which is not a common job or a title to have in an organization, fair hiring. Can you walk us through or give us some insights into your day-to-day responsibilities, and what kind of initiatives being undertaken by Seek Asia to ensure fair hiring among companies?
Yeah, no, it is an unusual role. And I think that what I love about it is there are many companies that will have a trust and safety function, right? That tends to kind of sit in its own box. But what makes my role really exciting is I get to work kind of across the different business units, right? And so I get to engage with product folks on how we can build AI tools that better detect, bad behavior. And I get to work with the commercial folks on identifying hires that could be a problem, or kind of pointing out issues that could arise. I get to work with the trust and safety folks on when we're doing these verifications, how are we digging into them? And so it's kind of it's a pretty fun role because we get to be forward thinking, and we get to kind of try to think out in front of the problems before they happen. And what's been really cool, because you hear about different experiences, and like I said, I come from kind of a social entrepreneur background, there's actually been like executive level support from the beginning, right? So my very first meeting with the global CEO, his instructions to me were, I need you to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and I need you to make sure that we're fighting to do the right thing. And if people are not doing the right thing, you come to me and we will take care of it, right? And I think that's the type of thing that when you have that type of support, it gives you kind of the movement to make sure that the company is doing the right thing. Again, the scammers and the bad actors are going to try to use every technology platform available to do the wrong thing. So, but I have a strong belief that we are doing what we need to, and we will continue to improve to make sure our platforms are safe.
Okay. Well, I do wonder, at the basic level to you, what does fair hiring mean? Because I'm trying to think that in instances where companies are not actually fully aware of maybe unintentional harm that they may cause to workers.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that's, so this is where getting to operate in kind of some of these markets that are really implementing technology is exciting, right? Because a lot of times what you're saying is absolutely right. A hirer may not know that what they're doing is unethical or unfair, right? And so what we're really looking at is, how do we build processes and how do we build tools that just build that into it, so they don't even have to think about it, right? So, for example, we're working on products that are really focused on, it's called Job Street Express, and it's in Indonesia right now. and it's very much focused on kind of the semi-skilled segment, right? And these would be hires that typically wouldn't have any sort of documentation as part of them. There wouldn't be any sort of kind of follow-up. There wouldn't be any sort of kind of verification of legal documents or that it's a registered business. And so we're trying to bring those tools and bring them to light and then insert an ethical, transparent hiring process for them. And we can do that because we are the platform that they're using, right? So the biggest thing for us as an organization is to make sure that we're implementing those on our platform. And then along with that, and one of the things that you're hitting on is that we want to raise more awareness for it along the way. And that's where we feel like we can really maximize our impact.
Could you talk a bit about the tools that are being used by Seek Asia on its platforms to ensure more ethical, as you mentioned, transparent hiring process?
Yeah, so I mean, we're doing everything from, like I said, like manual checks with human beings that are going through job ads, and we're integrating more, we're onboarding more and more tools all the time. We're doing manual checks. We have filters that are looking at keywords and looking at keywords in combination together, and then putting, identifying those, which then are getting kicked back to our teams. We're rolling out, and we have implemented AI tools, especially looking at the aggregated ads that are coming onto our platform, and we're looking at how we can identify pockets of risk with certain words that are said or certain locations or other things, as well as really looking at the investigation side, right? So when we get a report on our platform, and this is where I'm really proud of how we handle this, because there's, if a lot of websites, when you go through, you'll go onto the website and it'll say like, report this, right? And you click that and you feel like nobody's ever going to see it again, right? You may fill out and say, oh, I don't like this, or I'm concerned about that. Our team is on it. And the way that we handle those is something that I'm proud of. And those get escalated and handled professionally. And I think that those tools together, along with kind of looking forward, how we integrate AI more effectively, gives us a good position. Now, again, is it going to be perfect? No, but I think we can be really great. And that's kind of what we're focused on.
Well, on the topic of AI, where do you stand on AI? Do you think that machines can make fairer or less biased decisions than humans when it comes to recruitment?
If it's not monitored, then I think it will tend to kind of reinforce a lot of bias, right? Seek actually has an ethical AI team that's focused on this type of problem directly, right? And the neat thing for us is that when we talk about these things, some companies talk about them as if there's kind of this nebulous topic that they're bringing up because they need to say that they're ethical or that they're non-discriminatory. For us, we want our hires to be successful, right? And hires are most successful when they have the most talented, most qualified people in roles. And so we can help them, and we believe over time we're going to be better at this, help cut through some of that bias and help them target the right candidate. And so as we work through that, it's actually a value add to our customers to make sure that there's less bias in the recruitment process.
Now, we talk about the issue of exploitation involving workers. We tend to primarily focus on companies operating in lower income or developing countries because that's where labor laws are weaker. I do wonder at with your capacity at Seek Asia, what is the conversation with corporates who are maybe not as aware or maybe not, maybe a bit reluctant, when it comes to ensuring fair hiring practices? How do you convince them? How do you ensure that these companies uphold ethical practices?
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to be the police. We're never going to be the labor departments. Yeah. That's not our role. What we want to do is we want to make sure that the hiring and recruitment and that vetting process is done as ethically as it possibly can be, according to the law, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have terms and services that say that they have to follow the law, and we're going to let the law enforcement enforce those things. Now, when there's a really questionable hire or a hire that there's real accusations with, and we are more than happy to work with authorities. We're not the group that says, oh no, we'll provide the information that we're legally obliged to. And we don't fight that either, right? Because we want to keep candidates safe. But in general, I would say that our view is that we want to let law enforcement enforce the law, while at the same time, when we get complaints or when we get a lot of challenges with the hirer, of course, we may need to do a review and figure out if they belong on our platform.
Okay, all right. Well, I understand, of course, what you can do is just vet the applications and also the postings. I'm quite interested with your background, actually, Scott, having transitioned from working on the ground in a social enterprise to your current role in the corporate sector combating exploitative work systems. How do you perceive the difference in terms of your ability to affect change?
No, that's a fun question. I gotta say, like when I started this role, you kind of you talk to folks and you'll have people say, oh no, you're gonna it's gonna be a rude awakening because companies are gonna value profits before everything else. Now, the neat thing about us is that us having a trusted platform is part of us being a good company that not only does good socially and has a positive impact, but also has people using our platform and has good financial returns, right? And so what's been neat has been the instructions from the very beginning have been, how do we make this the most trusted platform? And I haven't actually felt any of that, especially from a financial pressure to do the wrong thing or kind of to justify any of the acts. We've actually had instances where we looked at things and we said, hey, there's real risk here, especially in response to some of the pig butchering that was going on and is going on in some of the regions. We looked at that. We just said, you know what? This doesn't make sense for us to have job ads in a lot of these countries. The risk doesn't make sense to the business, and it doesn't make sense to our candidates. And people trust us, and so the right thing to do is to actually take those ads off of our platform. And that there's a real financial cost to that. Yeah. But the trust that we have with our candidates and that we are able to maintain over a couple decades of operating in the region is worth it, right? And so that's been the neat thing is that one of our company kind of policies or philosophies is that we take the long view, and the long view is that you keep your candidates safe. And so I haven't felt a lot of kind of tug and pull from an ethical perspective on that.
Okay. Well, in the final few minutes that we have, Scott, could you share with us some of your plans, particularly with regard to the Southeast Asia region when it comes to improving fair hiring?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the starting point is we need to stay vigilant on what we're working on now. We need to make sure that our platforms continue to be and even improve in the trust and safety that we have with our candidates. And so that's kind of the first one. But the best way that we can do that is to raise awareness, right? And I think that's kind of the thing that we're doing right now. And we want our candidates to be informed, to know that there are bad actors out there, and to know the things that we're doing to prevent them from emerging. So platform safety and security of our existing platforms is the number one thing. I think that the kind of our second part of the role that is really important right now is looking at kind of special projects and ways that we can engage, whether it be with government or law enforcement or other companies that are interested in improving their ethical hiring or kind of setting a standard for what ethical hiring looks like across the region. And that's the thing that we're just starting to engage on right now. But there's really kind of unlimited opportunity for us to impact and have a positive impact in this space.
Would you be able to talk about specific initiatives relating to Malaysia by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Malaysia is that, we're starting to just roll out some of those initiatives. There's a lot of opportunity in Malaysia, right? It's what's happened in Malaysia is pretty miraculous. And the way that they have been able to bring migrant labor in and to grow the economy through that migrant labor is really impressive. Everybody knows, we've all seen headlines that there's challenges with that, right? And there is things that the Malaysian government is in the news every day talking about solving, right? And so we think that there's a lot of opportunity, especially in the migrant worker space. Now, what's encouraging to see in Malaysia is that a lot of these big companies are actually interested and engaged in solving these problems, right? They're reimbursing workers for fees that happened in the sending side country. They're going through and they're paying auditors to come in and audit and improve their processes. And so we think there's a huge opportunity in Malaysia, and we don't see that going away. We see that being an issue that can be solved, and we'll see rapid improvement, hopefully over the next 5 years, but we see that being a thing that there's going to require constant vigilance over the coming years.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for sharing your insights. It's great to have you on the show, and hopefully see you maybe one day in Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much, Scott. Thanks for your time.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.